Hello, my name is Joe Cartwright and welcome to my studio. When painting a scene like this, there are two things that we just have to get right. First one is tones. Where are the lighter tones, where are the darker tones, and how do those tones move from light to dark and vice versa. The other thing is edges. So the closer an object is to you in a thick fog, the sharper edge it will be, and the further away, the softer edge it will be. So let's begin with a simple drawing. The sun is roughly in this position. I'm just going to very lightly mark that. I don't want the pencil marks to show through, so you probably won't even be able to see it. And we've got some trees. And there's a mixture of evergreens and deciduous trees. And that's really it. We have a hint at where the sun is, just a rough idea of the shape of the foliage, and most of the work is going to be done with a brush in this case. As per usual, I'll begin by wetting the back of my paper. This is more important with a subject like this, where so much of the painting is done in a wet-on-wet fashion. Because by wetting the back of the paper, it'll just help us to keep those wet-on-wet passages workable for much longer. While that's absorbing the water, let's look at our palette. So the sky, will start with a blue. It's a slightly warm grey colour, but I'll start with some cobalt blue. And I'll add some burnt sienna to it. Small amount of permanent rose. The permanent rose was just to get rid of a slight green tint that I had there, which probably just came about through some other colour that was on top of my paint wells. I'll mix a similar grey here, but this time I'll start with French Ultramarine. Add some burnt sienna. And this will be my darker tone. And while you can't see it in the photo, in real life, especially for the grasses and the conifers, you would see a hint of green. So I'm going to add my cool yellow, aureolin in this case, and a small amount of cobalt turquoise to that. Barely see it, but I like to add it anyway. And then around the sun there's a slightly warm area, so I'll pick up some very weak cad orange. And that will do for that. Okay, I'm going to add some more water to the back of this. The aim is to add enough water that the paper sits flat on my board so that it finishes expanding or cockling, but isn't that wet that the front gets wet. I'm going to rub out the pencil mark for the sun. I really don't want that to show through, but I know it's about there. Then going to get some clean water and just paint around that shape. That will help preserve that highlight for a little while I paint the rest of the sky. Now, other than the sun and its reflection, the sky is the lightest toned area of this painting. The sky gets lighter and warmer around where the sun is. So added some of that warmth, and then I've made sure it's darker the further away I get from the sun, like that. With a subject like this, you could pre-wet the paper, leaving the sun area dry when you do that. However, you then have to make allowances for it with your mixes, because if you pre-wet the front of the paper, as soon as you put paint on it, that paint mix is going to be immediately diluted, right? So you have to keep that in mind. Now that's the sky done. Going to dilute some of this mixture, cool it down with a bit more blue, dull it with a bit more burnt sienna. It's too strong. And again, it's not that critical because the fog is going to keep changing. I'll put some of this here. This is where the darkest darks along this edge are going to go. Now I'm going to get my size 8 brush, make sure it's nice and clean, take out about 90% of the water and then just run it along that edge just to make sure that the sun's edge is quite soft. So I've just added some burnt sienna to reduce some of the green in that mixture, and that will also warm it up a bit, and I'm going to use that to paint the water. Picked up some of this paint, not too much, and I've dipped my brush in water to dilute it. Now before I do anything else, I have to remember the sun is here and there's a reflection there, so I'll just lift that. Pick up this darker paint. There's some rocks in the water. I'll leave some white paper there for those. And now I'll bring some of this paint back in. Very quick, light brush strokes to create a dry brush effect. In this case, I'm looking at how much light is in my subject rather than what's in the photo. Now, there's the sun, or the reflection of the sun. Clean my brush, take out about 99% of the water, and then I'm going to also lift some of that paint to either side. My paper still has quite a bit of shine on it. See that? I'm going to darken this. Just hinting at these softer shapes. I'm going to hint at a few ripples. This area is drying a bit too fast. Barely touching the paper just to move some of that surface paint around. And again, I've only dried it enough just to dry the top layer. The paper underneath is still quite wet. I'm using my fan brush to create some of these finer shapes. So I'm starting with my lightest tones in the distance. Just establishing the shoreline. Just French ultramarine, some cobalt turquoise and burnt sienna. Mostly French ultramarine and burnt sienna. get my rigger. Hint at some late season leaves on these trees here. So cobalt blue and burnt sienna make quite a cool grey. Quick brush strokes just to add some additional texture on the water. It's important to extend some of this dark colour from this side onto this side. Otherwise, the painting can look like it's cut off at this point. Now I'll get some French ultramarine, some burnt sienna, just a small amount of water. When I want just a small amount of water, I look in my palette to see there's some moisture there I can take advantage of. just hinting at some additional foliage and branches. You have to do this while this is damp at least, preferably with just a hint of shine on it. See that there? Just so that the paint merges together. And I'm going to get a credit card and just create a few little highlights at the water's edge. Break it up. Because this is still quite wet, most of these highlights will disappear. You can see how some of the paint's already flowing into them, and that should give me a more broken effect, because you don't want just a straight edge there. While that's drying, let's mix some paint for this shoreline. I need some extra water for that. Start with some French Ultramarine. Burnt sienna. Small amount of aureolin. Again, any cool yellow will do. And I'll have a bit more green in this, because remember, this grass is going to be quite close to us. Just concentrate on getting the shoreline edge first. Just hinting at a bird flying through our scene here. Put some rocks in the water. I want to bring this area down a little bit more. And my paper is barely damp now, so this is really danger territory. But if you do it right, you can add some nice marks to the painting. It's a size 10 finger in case you're wondering. Just adjusting some of these shapes. They're looking a bit too blotchy for my liking. Watch what your fingers do when you're painting like this. Not too difficult to fix because it was still quite wet. Just adding some more ripples to the water and we're nearly done. Just moving some of this thicker paint. It's not flowing as much as I would have liked it to do. I could get the spray bottle and spray that, but then I risk changing this area too much. I don't want it too flat because obviously there's lots of foliage, thicker foliage and thinner foliage. Okay, I'm very happy with that. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like, and if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. It helps me out a lot. And if you're able, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I look forward to seeing you for the next one.